we go back a long ways. Our high schools are kind of rivals, so you figure put your twist in before you get started. But I'm very honored to be here today. Thank you, ResCare, for the invitation. And I see that it's the 14th annual Champions Celebration. I moved from Samoa when I was 10 years old. Attended grade school in Hawaii, all the way to the University of Hawaii, and then I got drafted in 1983 from the San Francisco 49ers. I grew up a Ram fan, those of you that remember the Rams being here in Anaheim. And the Rams dominated the 49ers in the 70s. But then I tell people, then I saw the light. I got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in 1983, and I was fortunate enough to be the center to two guys that aren't very good, like Joe Montana and Steve Young. Other than that, I have to protect those two guys because they're not very good. But I'm very honored to be here tonight. I won 4 Super Bowl rings, but football is a game. It's a game that's run by a league. But today I want to talk about champions of life, what's really important. And when I grew up in Hawaii, didn't speak a word of English. And I kind of got away with it with shaking my head yes and no. It didn't matter if the question matched me shaking my head. That was my way of getting around it. But because I was pretty good in sports, it allowed me time to make some friends. And it allowed me to fit into society. It gave me help because people migrated to you if you're a pretty good athlete. But then 2 years later, some symptoms started acting up. And it was discovered that I had rheumatic fever. And rheumatic fever causes your aortic valve to tear in your heart. Well, I was the biggest kid in school. And imagine being a kid that's the biggest in the school, and when there's activities and there's physical education, you have to sit with a notebook next to your teacher and take roll while everybody else is playing. And kids at that age, as you know, every now and then will tell you, you are big for nothing. And that influenced, because that was so painful to me growing up, that I promised myself that if I was to ever have an opportunity to step on the playing field, I would never ever use an excuse to come off of that field. Because that was more painful than any physical pain that I went through as a football player. Well, in those old days, Nathan, you remember those trailer clinics in Hawaii where the doctor doesn't really listen to your heart? I was able to get away with it. And I played high school football in Hawaii at Farrington High School. Moved on to the University of Hawaii. Got away with it. Got drafted by the 49ers. My physical, my rookie year, I reported to Stanford Hospital. You can't get away with it. And when I reported in, the doctor said something's wrong. You have a heart murmur. And they took me to a cardiologist, and he says, you have an enlarged heart. And I sunk in the doctor's office because I felt like my dream was on the doorstep. And here it is. Now I'm going to be denied. Fortunately enough, Stanford is one of the better medical institutions in the West Coast. They decided, because I played high school and I played college, they were going to measure the walls of my heart every spring to make sure that it's not enlarged any further. And they will give me a chance to perform and play on the football field. I played for about 11 years, and Lisa and I every spring would sneak out of minicamp and go and get the cardiologist to check me, only because we didn't want the media to know. And this is before technology. Because if the media was to find out, them alone will end my career. And at the end of my 11th year, I went through the routine, and the doctor said, that is it. You can't play anymore. I said, why? He says, the leak in your heart is as bad as an 80-year-old man that has to climb 2 flights of stairs and have to sit down and rest because he can't catch his breath. He says, don't you feel like you're about to fall over on the field? I said, yes. But the guy I'm playing against looked like he's about to fall over too. This is serious. Because it's the way I counter things back because of that fear. And it was the first time I called my wife to come in the room, and it was the first time she saw me cry like a baby. Because it was over. 2 weeks later, we discovered there's a procedure in Europe called a Ross procedure, which uses a cadaver valve to replace that torn aortic valve. Because I didn't need an artificial valve at that time, it would allow me to come back and continue my career. So I'm the only player in NFL history to have open heart surgery and come back and play an additional 3 years. And I was on the field in Denver, out of all places, it's just my heart, high altitude. I was on the field 5 months after they opened my chest up. And I remember not really sure if the bone in my chest, this is not a knee operation. I've had a lot of knee operations, it's a little different deal. And I remember John Madden walking on the field before the game, because he was doing the broadcast, and he says, have you ever been punched in the chest yet? I said, Coach, I just reported in 2 days ago. And I'm ready to go. And I used every experience and every drop of knowledge in my power to survive on the football field, because you're playing against the best of the best. What's the point? One of my favorite quotes, or my favorite sayings is this: it's not the will to win that's important. It's the will to prepare yourself to win. It's what separates champions from the rest. It's not the will to win that's important. It's the will to prepare yourself to win is what separates champions from the rest. I still work for the 49ers today. I commute from Orange County. And I just want to say to our champions today that whether you make $10 million a year or you earn just enough to see a smile on your child's face, we all go through the same problems. We all go through the same insecurities. They are some of the most insecure millionaires playing in the NFL right now. And that is the honest truth. And sometimes the football field is our safe haven for us to go and perform because it's the only place that we're comfortable. But in everyday life, and the symposiums now are a lot more improved than when I came into the league. Every time SportsCenter comes on, I get nervous because one of our guys might be screwing up, and these little kids are looking at it. Don't depend on a professional athlete to raise your child. Just because we play professional football doesn't mean we're champions of life. What's most important is how you take care of your family, how you don't give up on yourself, how when obstacles face you, you step back and find a way to get it done. My whole life, I played 15 years. I was an all-pro at 2 positions. I won 4 Super Bowl rings. But you know what? I played in 8 NFC championship games in my 15 years. That means more than half. I was in the semifinals. Once I got to the Super Bowl, I'm undefeated. But you know, I lost the other half of my NFC championship games to the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s. You know, the Giants and the Redskins were good in the 80s. What does that say? I'm saying that I walk around with 4 Super Bowl rings, but what bothers me is the 4 losses that I suffered. So I'm not at total peace with myself, being a 4-time Super Bowl champion. But that's what life is all about. Life is putting a life in the right perspective. What is important? What is important? Just because you earn $15 million doesn't mean my impact, no, I don't earn $15 million. Some of the linemen are maybe making over 10 right now. What's important is the little difference that you make in someone's life. That's what life is all about. And I realized that as I was going through the league. Because the problem with athletes is people put us up on a pedestal. And whether they have symposiums or not, overnight, in a matter of 5 minutes, they sign a contract, they go from making zero in college to $15 million. Just like that, signing their name. Are they ready for life? Absolutely not. And the majority of us in that league grew up in single-parent homes, single mothers. There was no father for it as an influence. So how are you going to depend on us to raise the future of our generation, the future of our world, the future of our society? That's the reality of life. Admire what we do athletically, but be careful. Be careful as far as making sure that your child knows that the true role model is you. And when people ask me, how did you stay out of trouble? Trust me, there were some close calls, okay? Because in that industry, everything is handed to you. You win the Super Bowl, and that's why Lisa and I live in Orange County. You win the Super Bowl, you eat free anytime you feel like eating free. You get a ticket, and my wife gets mad at me, even though we don't pay for the ticket, because I'm nice to the officer, and the officer just, be careful, don't speed up too much. It's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. It's hard to put your feet on the ground. But the real champions are the people that are sitting in this room. People that make little differences at a time. Because when it comes down to it, that's what life is all about. And that's what really counts. That's what really counts. The NFL season might make you happy for a day. But if that's what you base your happiness on, you're going to be disappointed. So our champions here today understand one thing. We all have obstacles every single day that we have to overcome. The difference is how you feel about yourself and how you take one step at a time to accomplish one little goal at a time and get it done. And get it done. So when you look on TV and say, I wish I was like that guy, one paycheck can buy me 2 homes. I've seen some unhappy millionaires that play in the NFL because they're not at peace with themselves at home. So what you see is not necessarily what you're going to get. You're in the right path. Stay with it. Believe in yourself. When you run into an obstacle, step back, find a way to get it done, move forward. Because that's what life is all about. That's what real life is all about. And doing that, we'll become a better society because of it. God bless you and thank you for having me.